welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, now for this segment, we are being joined by the TTUTA Tobago officer, and that's Mr. Bradon Roberts, as we discuss what's going on with our teachers and having a look back at this year. So a special good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning. As usual, it's a pleasure to be on set.
Great. Now, so I'm going to get started with what's happening with the back pay for teachers. We saw from the Division of Education that Tobago's teachers are going to get paid by the 31st, and, well, obviously not the 19th as was promised by the government, because the division said that they only got the funds from the Ministry of Finance on Tuesday, and now they have to start the process of getting it out to the teachers.
All right. So I understand the challenge that the division faced, but let me just first say the excuse of the money coming on Tuesdays is not an excuse to use at all. I would understand the division, not with the relationship they have with the ministry and so on, or with finance, that they may feel slighted or disrespected that there's that communication and they only got the funds on Tuesday. But if the sheets were ready, the funds come in Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, wouldn't have affected teachers getting the money. What I do know, it's not a simple task to have all the increments calculated at the correct point to then calculate the back pay at the point that it's supposed to be at. So it's significant work needed to go in. I know the politicians, the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister gave up before Christmas, and the division and the ministry had to make it work. The division, based on my understanding, would have brought in additional auditors and so on, had a concerted effort towards ensuring that the calculations are done on time. I am still grateful that they are where they are, as they can promise that before the year ends, they should be able to pay all the increments and the back pay, because it's not just paying the back pay, it's also paying the increments. I do not believe that the ministry is focusing much on the increments part of it. They're going to pay the back pay at whatever salary scale that puts down currently, and they will sort out that part afterwards in the main. So the division is seeking to do it in the way in which it ought to be done, in terms of having the increments calculated properly first and then pay the back pay. I also know that the ministry put out a release the Monday saying that the back pay will be paid with salary on the Tuesday.
Yes.
So the division may have been caught off guard, but it's not for me to give an excuse for them. They should be ready. And based on my communication with the administrator and her team, some of the sheets are already prepared, so the person should start seeing their money by tomorrow, and some after Christmas before the year ends.
And there was a concern that you had in terms of the amount of teachers that would be benefiting from the back pay. So the Minister of Finance said, 90% of the teachers would be recipients, but there is some issues in terms of the calculation and what made up that 90% number.
Well, that 90% submission is politics. Who goes to count to see if it's 90% or not? Based on the feedback we have been getting in Trinidad, I don't know that we can safely say it's anywhere close to 90% of the persons, but I don't know if it's tact or outright dishonesty to say 90% when you know outright that we won't be able to calculate that. But several persons been complaining that they haven't seen anything in their account in Trinidad. And in Tobago, persons have not seen it as yet. And then they gave a 90% throughout Trinidad and Tobago. So I don't know where they got that figure from. But we are monitoring the ground, and we are liaising with persons with the division and the ministry to ensure that things are done as timely as is possible.
Now, this 2023 was a very interesting year for education and so on. And looking back, we're gonna start broad, and then we're gonna narrow it down a little bit. If you look back at this year, what is your view on how this year was handled in terms of the teachers and on our education system and so on?
Well, we would have made some progresses as a union and as teachers in terms of some of even the same increments that we've been behind the division for some time to pay, and they're making efforts to pay those now. We have persons with outstanding appointments and approvals. The classification of the leave, we have been advocating for those things. Several of those would have come back since. However, some of the key things in terms of like policy matters and so on, we seem to have been running on the same spot for some time, and I would hope that next year becomes a little more fruitful. And if I could itemize,
sure.
We started off this year bright and early with the meeting to discuss Kandace Secondary School. I see I'm invited to another meeting for January again. I don't see any change throughout the entire year as to we know for sure this land has been acquired and earmarked for Scarborough Secondary School. We had persons come to the meeting in January empty-handed and just spoke freely. We don't know what is happening with the design. So I look forward to that meeting in January to see what will have transpired, but based on my understanding as to how this thing's supposed to go, I don't believe that anything substantial has been done where that is concerned. We also had the challenges with school repairs, and there was this promise of the artisan team that going to come where persons from works and so on would visit schools. So you don't wait until July, August to do the extent of the work. I would have gotten information that it's a challenging thing to put together, but we need to maintain our schools throughout the year in such a way where we don't end up with a strong bill, a heavy bill at the July-August period.
So when compared to 2022, was the handling of the maintenance of school any better or any worse?
Well, it cannot be better. I know that they had UID cuts, I can't remember how it's pronounced, but they managed the repair program this time around, and I do not believe it was as smooth as it should be. But we have our teachers, we try our very best. We minimize the refusal to work. Some teachers weren't even happy that, we asking them to hold on and hold that strain and so on, because a lot of teachers been holding that strain and working in unsafe conditions for some time. And they were even upset with some of the teachers at St. Andrew's School when they took the stands with the rats and so on, but you see that it was needed. Some of the same parents found that the teachers didn't want to work, but their children in that same environment. So to say that it was better handled, I know that they did less work this year because they did a lot of work last year. Well, they spent a lot of money last year, but it's the management of it that will make the difference. And I don't think it was better managed because it was more outsourced to this company, IDCUT. In liaison with the division and bringing some of the issues, you could sense that the communication between IDCUT and the procurement project implementation unit at the division, it was not as smooth as it should be. But we continue to work with. So in my capacity as a Tobago officer, I'm already compiling the schools with the issues and so on. So at least very early next year, the division could have a submission where they cannot say by June they're not ready, or by May they're not ready. They should have an idea of the things that they need to do and they need to put in place. So we don't have a September where we're in the media and highlighting the same things we've been doing for the previous year. So that's where the work is.
And then in terms of the way that, the long-standing issues with the teachers, contracts and so on, to moving from that contract state to being a full-fledged teachers, that's been a battle for quite a long time. Did we see any improvements in that at all?
Yeah, we have made some progress where that is concerned. Several of the teachers who were on contract were brought on in service, not to the quantum that we need at this current time. We would have had the division following through with a promise to have a task force examine the secondary schools to see what the needs are. Based on the reports that we have received, the task force would have been complete. No, we were supposed to have a report ready in September. It wasn't ready, and then it was October, and then November, and then they're doing the final editing, that's the submission. However, it's something that we are pushing forward to ensure that at least we can have a proposal go forward to cabinet to have the necessary increase of the establishment. That is what is needed. We are much closer now than we have ever been in terms of preparing a base, because you need to sell this to central government and even to the Teaching Service Commission to ensure that our Tobago teachers are given that preference in taking up those positions. So we have made some strides. And the division would have found some vacancies where they would have been put in some contract in service. It's not at the rate at which we would want, but there is some optimism where that is concerned, and I'm grateful for the work done so far. I would ask of the division to here's still some of the work that they're doing, and we need to come back to that table to see how we can move forward, because we have to work collaboratively to ensure that we get success in this matter.
Now, what are you looking forward to in 2024?
Well, to say incrementally, we have made with the relationship with even the secretary, the assistant secretary, we had a much better year this year than last year. With those improved relations, we should be able to really get down to the work. I hope that next year, you see some of this, the curriculum issues,
Yes.
the school violence and those things, if we can work together on those things, we're going to make the environment much welcoming to both teachers and students and all those persons who utilize the compound and so on. So there are some curriculum goals that we really need to work on. I believe if there was a collaborative effort towards this Tobago-centric thing, where TTUTA could have been at a meeting with them, because there are ideas that we have shared but even within the media as to how we can go about doing this thing. We have not been called to any meeting. I'm hearing that somebody is doing something and some pilot was done, something that I know nothing about. But if we can have that collaborative effort on some of those issues, I trust that we're going to make some efforts. My concern just be the politics. I think too much effort is in the look of the thing, and we're not getting into the work of it. So I trust that with the payment of the increment, some of those issues will come off. The TSC coming to Tobago are a lot more frequent now. The TSC called yesterday to indicate that they're coming for a meeting in January. Good. And they want to meet with TTUTA and other stakeholders. So those things are what we encourage and we look forward to. Again, the policy things, I hope that there could be a greater collaboration. So we're not fighting. But we need to work together a little more to ensure that some of the long outstanding promises, like this artisan team and the Tobago-centric and the health, because they said they was going to have a collaboration with persons from health to check schools, because like it's Mount St. George, they have the issue with flies. Whenever rain falls, they are downhill from the dump. So it's a carpet of flies. So some teachers will either go to their car to eat, they go to the office where it's closed off, where they can eat comfortably, but the children are there also with their school feeding, competing with the flies. So there are some things that they have been promised, and if we work collaboratively on it, we will be able to make some strides. There's one initiative that we work collaboratively on, and that was the online education, where myself and some persons, some primary and secondary, who are part of our team at the division, we would have produced a draft policy that we should be moving forward with. So at least online education, there should be a way forward in the near future.
Certainly.
And if we use that same modality for the other initiatives, I trust that we're going to make greater successes for both the politicians' point of view and for the teachers and education and even our citizens in Tobago, because we need to change the culture, and education is the way for that.
Certainly. And I mean, as we just look back on this year and we're seeing, ending this year, hopefully no more murders, but it's very telling when you look at how some of the crime and stuff like that, and we're always cognizant of the fact that education plays such a integral role in the way how our society is. So we're definitely looking forward to what's to come in 2024, and it is good news hearing from TTUTA that there is a little bit of optimism. Because we need some of that. All right, so I want to thank you so much, Mr. Roberts, for being on with us, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful Christmas, and we're looking forward for good things in 2024.
Yes, and as I close, I just want to also wish your team and to our teachers a great season with love and appreciation for each other and the time that we have on this earth, that we spend that time to make each other happy.
Certainly.
And not with all the anger and so that we are seeing of today. Also to the teachers with the back pay and all the other sections that will be getting their back pay, please be careful. There are investors who will be looking at what you have, some on the negative side. Invest your money wisely so that we don't end up in the same position in 2024 that we've been in for all these years we've been waiting for our settlement. So all the best to Tobago and to Trinidad and Tobago for this Christmas season.
Thank you so much, Mr. Roberts. All right, viewers, so that's it for this interview, but we've got more coming up for you on GMT, so don't go anywhere. We're back after this break.